Following takes place between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. Events occur in real time.
Hey, good morning, everyone. That's right. We finally made it on air today. December 9th, 2021. Yeah, we're getting close. We're getting close to the end of the year. 2022 is just around the corner, and I think I can speak for everyone when I say leave your 2022 is my year nonsense at the door. I don't want to hear any of it. I don't care what you have going on. I just don't want to hear the stupid cliches over and over again. I'm tired of it. Last couple of years have just been kind of, whatever, John. I don't want to hear 2022 is our year. I'm done with it. Done with it, John. Finished.
Who's been saying that?
I don't know. People on Twitter and but you know what I mean. We get this stuff every year. It's like it's like the New Year's resolution thing. Everyone just obviously knows that they're kind of BS. I mean, if New Year's resolution, it basically January 21st is the cutoff date for those. Yeah, after that, you're pretty much free to start slacking on whatever resolution that you had. But no, you see it every year. These people get excited. Oh, 2022 is going to be my year. 2021, like, I hated 20. Everyone had a bad 2020. Everyone had a bad 2021. Let's just stop.
Except for Tom Brady. Except for Tom Brady. He won his seventh Super Bowl, and yesterday it was announced that he is Sports Illustrated. Yes, 7.
Yeah.
Same as Mickey Mantle.
Yes.
Mickey Costanza.
Yeah.
My idol. Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out how. Now in Seinfeld, Costanza's what? Probably, I was born in 1963. I think Jason Alexander was born in the late 50s. So I'm not quite sure how, well, maybe Mickey Mantle could have been his idol because Mantle was still a great player in 62, 63.
I feel like the legends of the game, I guess, kind of lived on a little bit stronger before the advent of social media and this like highlight reel era that we're in now. I feel like those players are more. That's why guys like Babe Ruth and Bobby Orr's, the old timers, the Gordie Howes, they're more revered now than some of the great stars in like say the 80s or 90s because they kind of lasted a few generations. So I get that. Plus, it's like, look, it's the Yankees, and if you remember correctly, the time in which George the Seinfeld was taking place was right before the Yankees won in the late 90s, because obviously the joke being like, they were kind of a joke of a franchise. And, one of my favorite scenes of all time in that show was when Steinbrenner was at the Costanzas telling his parents that he thought George was dead. And Frank, goes on about him trading Jay Buhner and all that.
Great.
It was just, it gets me every time. I love it. But
I like when George is like, I think I got it figured out how we can get Bonds and Griffey without giving up too much. And I'm like, perfect, absolutely. But Tom Brady had a great 2021. He won his 7th Super Bowl, and yesterday it was announced that he's Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year.
Makes sense.
For the second time in his career. So, yeah, congratulations to Tom. So everybody else had a terrible 2021 except TB12.
Yeah, everything's coming up Brady. I mean, you could say that just about every other year, over the past 20 years. Most years are, pretty, especially for NFL quarterbacks, are pretty, non-successful at the end of it, except for Tom. Tom's been in a little right. You know what? Actually,
rub it in.
Yeah, well, no, I didn't name names. You name names. That was perfect. I had that ready to go.
You're good, you.
No, look, I mean, it was well deserved. I mean, I saw people complaining about it, but the reality of it is we're talking calendar year 2021. So the guy won a Super Bowl in 2021, all this stuff. So, and he's right now the MVP favorite, had a great season so far, which is good. But it actually, I saw this earlier today, and I don't know which account tweeted this out. I did want to bring this up though, because this is kind of a discussion that we had yesterday. And it was like you had to cut 2, and it lists, I believe it was 6 quarterbacks. It was Peyton Manning.
Saw that.
Yeah, Brett Favre, Tom Brady, John Elway. Who am I missing?
Drew Brees was in there.
Yeah, Drew Brees, and then
Montana, Manning,
Montana.
Elway, Brady.
Yeah, Montana was the one I was missing. So to me, it was a very simple choice.
Pretty simple, yeah.
Breeze and Favre, easily.
Right, absolutely. And two quarterbacks that Aaron Rodgers is better than.
Yes, but, correct. Well,
there you go.
So you got your good positive in there.
But I would have still cut Aaron Rodgers if he was on there, because to me the four best quarterbacks that I've ever seen are in order: Brady, Montana, Manning, and Elway. So those are the four guys. I mean, Rodgers can break in if he wins another Super Bowl, maybe surpass Elway or Manning, or maybe both. But yeah, no, you nailed it. Brett Favre's not as good as those four, and certainly Drew Brees. I don't even know how he's in there over Aaron Rodgers and maybe even Steve Young. I mean, I think better quarterback.
The funny thing was, and I saw some people and someone listed, and this always gets me. They said they cut Brady and Elway because they feel like the others would do more with less.
Yeah,
and that
idiocy.
Yeah, that made my head hurt, because I'm trying to figure out how do they come off determining that the quarterbacks that have done the least of those group. And, and I'm talking about, I mean, you're talking about the two guys, Elway and Brady, who have the most Super Bowl appearances, right. 1 and 2. That they've combined to go to 15. Like, what are we talking about here? So it's just, it's just normal everyday Twitter discourse that just doesn't make sense half the time, and at the end of the day gives me like little headaches, where I'm kind of like Frank Costanza. This is a Seinfeld themed show today. Kind of like Frank Costanza when he loses his train of thought, and I had to pause for a second. I lose it. But I saw that and I thought of you, and I thought of our conversation from Tuesday. Actually, I believe it was.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty easy discussion. I mean, I don't even know what the debate would be. I mean, heck, Elway beat Favre in a Super Bowl. And Elway, talk about a guy who took a lot of garbage to Super Bowls. I mean, John Elway didn't have much around him. Finally, they got him a running game and a good defense, and he won back-to-back Super Bowls in his last 2 years. And I appreciate the love for John Elway, because I've told you, I think all things being equal, Brady and Elway are the two greatest quarterbacks that I've seen. If you put them all in the same situation, the same coach, the same era, the same supporting cast, the same defense, those would be the two greatest quarterbacks. But yeah, I mean, to say those would be the first two you dropped, I mean, maybe they thought this was like golf. It's reversed. The low score is high, the high score is low. Mm-hmm. Maybe they were confused on Twitter.
Maybe. Hey, sometimes they are. I mean, we see your guy Aaron Rodgers getting credit for far more than what he's done. So hey, maybe that's true.
Where'd you come up with that? I'm being nice this morning.
Hey, I got one in. You got one in. Now it's my turn to get one in. So it's your turn.
I didn't criticize Tom Brady. I wouldn't dare do that because it would probably ruin my 2022 year coming up.
Don't worry about it. This is his swan song anyways. He's going to retire at the end of this year, and you're going to have to fully invest into Justin Herbert unless you have a backup plan.
Well, I'll watch Jeopardy then, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, hey, they've had some problem hammering down a host of late, so we'll see. Maybe that job will still be available for him. No, I know we're all over the place because we keep going football, Seinfeld football. Elway, Marino, Snowflake, all that stuff. But actually, one of my other really, well, I can say that about like pretty much every Seinfeld episode because it's like, they're great. There's a lot of them great. An episode that premiered on this day in 1993, thanks to our one of my favorite accounts this Thursday. It's This Podcast Is Making Me Thirsty on Twitter. The Cigar Store Indian. And we get a lot of really good interactions here. Obviously, the TV Guide plot with Elaine taking it from Frank, who happens to collect TV guides, and that's just kind of funny in its own sense.
I didn't find that funny because I used to keep every Sports Illustrated.
That's a little bit different though. I mean,
it's a little better. It's a bigger magazine, and there's great athletes on it, right? I like although TV Guide, you have the icons of TV on there, whether it be Jackie Gleason or Lucille Ball or Carol O'Connor or whatever.
And look, we're both. I mean, obviously, you're old. You're old enough, and I am also old enough to. I had TV
another
guys.
shot.
No, hey, wow. No. I'm talking about your wisdom and your experience right here. And the fact that you're around before the, eras of TiVo and TV guide, actual on-screen guide, stuff like that. It was just, back in the day. Hey, look, I'm old enough for that. Like, we used to get TV guides coming to the house. That's how you knew what was on.
I did too, yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, so I guess, I mean, there's some nostalgic value to some of it, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's like it is pretty funny. But anyways, we get the great and I'm blanking on the actor's name, and I should have looked it up. The guy that steals the TV Guide, who later makes an appearance, obviously, as the mannequin creator, the Elaine,
right?
Which again opens up one of my, it was one of my favorite, just subtle little one-liners where they walk in, Elaine, Jerry, and Kramer walk into the store. I'm sorry, I think it was George, walk into the store, and it's when the mannequin was displayed being bent over and looking like she was being spanked.
Exactly.
And Jerry's comment says the resemblance is uncanny, and I swear I lose it every single time. But again, the episode that premiered on this day, way back.
So that episode, that 1993, and the thing is about that, I remember when I was doing Herald Radio, I constantly there was about a 1 minute prior to that we would constantly run about political correctness. And remember, you can go on YouTube and see it where Jerry can't say certain words because he's dating Winona, who's Native American. So, he can't even say that he made reservations at the restaurant or whatever the case may be because you have to be politically correct. That was 28 years ago. I mean, talk about being ahead of its time, because that's all we talk about now is political correctness. But again, 28 years ago, they were on top of that.
Yeah. And like, what's funny too is like you think about some of the episodes with Mickey, Kramer's pal. And, there was one in particular where George, just like it would be at the time. I mean, just casually using, they're calling them a derogatory term for a little person. And, obviously they have a little moment where he makes that correction and Kramer makes mention of it. And it's like, it's a comedy, so you don't really think about it. And in the essence of being funny, it is funny. Again, like I know certain there's not much gray area anymore. Everything seems to be very black and white, but there's ways to be, funny by, essentially using things that may or may not be offensive. I mean, it's just how it is. I mean, there's always lessons to be learned and stuff like that. You can't blind yourself from these things. It's better to, at least be exposed to it as opposed to completely naive and ignore the fact that stuff like this exists. But to your point, I mean, this is 1993. I mean, political correctness, I don't even think people understood what that meant. In 1993, like, what are you talking? Political correctness? Like what? Politics? But yeah, it was just it was, but that episode was really just like you said, just, I mean, there's so many different words. It was like, he was going to go sell tickets outside, and the general term people use for that is a scalper, and but it also like to think about, like, sometimes, like, in the show, like, Jerry's kind of portrayed as the one that has it together the most, and I use that term loosely because we know, like, the essence of the show is really that they're just kind of not great people. You know what I mean? They're kind of selfish and just always kind of screws up, But like, think about this: Jerry goes in and just completely unaware of how it would look, goes in and buys the cigar store Indian, and then brings it up into a crowded room and acts, does doing the hand to the mouth thing and all that stuff. And it's like, you think about it, it's like, wow, come on, Jerry, you got to have a little bit more sense than that, because, well, you know what I mean? So it's funny, and at the end of the day, you kind of, maybe you learn a little bit of lesson. Maybe you're like, oh, you know what?
That's when Elaine says to me, "Are you insane?"
Yeah.
Winona's exactly. Native American, and he goes, "Oh."
Yeah.
Then he asked the Chinese mailman where the best Chinese restaurant is in the area. He doesn't know he's Chinese because the guy has his head, in the mailbox, and when he taps him on the shoulder and goes, "Sir, do you know where the best Chinese food is in this area?" And the guy turns around and is furious because he's asking him where the best Chinese restaurant is in the area. I mean, that's a classic. Well, again, I'm with you. Like, every episode to me is classic. I don't have one that I didn't walk away from thinking about and laughing with.
Well, think about George's the episode with him and Mr. Morgan, where he says he shows a striking resemblance to Sugar Ray Leonard, and I mean, that whole episode, again, is just kind of it just kind of shows the nature of what I would suppose the time was. You know what I mean? Like, you know, trying to tiptoe around certain, like you said, political correctness, or, you know, certain, yeah, I don't know, narratives, or let's say stereotypes that people had, you know,
Right.
based on their relations, or who their friends were and whatnot. And you know, another great line. Um, you know, another great line from that episode was George talking about how he had, you know, all his, you know, African American friends, and then Jerry said something along the lines of, "Man, you don't even have any white friends outside of us," you know, like, and it's just kind of,
Right.
again, it's funny because at the end of the day, it's like you look at this group of people, and it's like, man, they are the only people that would be friends with each other. You know what I mean? It's like, you
Sure.
think about the
Yeah.
awful things they do, kind of the selfishness, all that stuff. It's great, but it's great though. And again, that's why the show's great. That's why it's funny. And you know, as we know, it's not just necessarily race. It's you know, the episode of, you know, about them pretending, or convincing or tricking the NYU reporter that they were gay, and it's like that. That's a, you know, you think now it's like, okay, it's not a big deal now, but in the '90s it kind of was. Like, you sit there and you're like, you know, you're not used to that, and it was such a there was such a bad stigma around it at the time that, you know, they brought levity to it. And again, you would hope that, you know, yeah, it was a comedy, but, you know, hopefully maybe people took something out of that, that, you know, it really isn't a big deal like people, you know, certainly at the time felt it was. So I feel like we could do a historical discussion about Seinfeld. Maybe we'll write a book together, co-author a book about Seinfeld. How about that?
Yeah, a 24-part podcast. How's
Yeah.
that sound?
It might have to be a little bit more than that.
Probably more than that. We could do a podcast on every episode. So
Yeah.
there's like 130 or so. So
Yeah,
that
something like that.
would tie up a lot of time. Let's do it. Let's go for it. I was going to do a Columbo podcast with Pete Croatto, who we had on the Pick and Roll NBA podcast. He wrote a book about the 80s NBA, and he's a big Columbo fan. I said, yeah, let's do a Columbo podcast, but there was only 69 episodes of Columbo, so it would have been shorter than Seinfeld.
And folks out there under the age of 30, Columbo was a show. It was on the air many, many years ago. I suggest looking it up and educating yourself. So
really good.
I look. Hey, I can't pretend like I didn't see. I've watched a lot. I like a lot of those old shows, and I don't mean to take a shot at you, but, you know, I was a Night Court fan. All right, that was on before I was old, or before.
Yeah,
I was
that's
born.
true.
You know, I like that stuff. You know,
that was good stuff. That's the 80s. I'm going back. You know, Seinfeld, not Seinfeld. Columbo is one of the few shows I've ever. It had 69 episodes, but there was an episode. The first episode was in the 60s, and the last episode was in the early 2000s. Like, talk about like 5 decades. Like, there were 5 decades of Columbo: 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s.
Yeah,
it was just
crazy.
Spread out so much. That's pretty crazy. I mean, he was, you know, he aged well. I mean, it was about 32 years apart from the first to the last. So pretty amazing, because it would dip in and dip out. It was only on
it's like the Gordie Howe thing. It's like, you know, he's
the Gordie Howe of TV. That's true. Yeah,
like that. You know, it's like he began playing near the end of one decade, and, you know, kind of, but again, to play 5 decades in the NHL, I mean, that's or whatever it was,
crazy.
Over the course of 4 or 5 decades, is pretty absurd. That's crazy. I don't even know how we got to talking Gordie Howe. I mean, this all kind of started with Seinfeld. Hey, you know, we do what we want here, and you know what? Today dictated a Seinfeld discussion. I do want to mention real quick. There is a football game on today, folks. Yes, that's right, Thursday Night Football, and it's kind of a meaningful game. Not so much for anyone in the AFC, but in the NFC. It's kind of a big. Well, I know. I take that back. Pittsburgh is actually technically still in this race, so I don't want to eliminate them yet. I don't. Like I said, but I mean, at the end of the day, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, who's this game more important for? And it might be Minnesota, because Minnesota's at 5-7. I think we both believe they're a better team than 5-7, whatever that means. I mean, I don't even know what it means, so I don't know why I'm even saying it. But that's what my gut says, because, you know, we look at their loss by total. You know, the total number of points that they've lost their 7 games by. It's probably going to be the lowest in the league, I would imagine. They've been in every single game. And they beat some pretty good teams. I mean, they beat Green Bay just a couple weeks ago. That that's looking like a puzzling loss if they keep losing these games for Green Bay. But at the end of the day, I think Minnesota's a pretty good team. They just can't seem to win. I mean, is this just the epitome of Kirk Cousins? Because but on the surface, it looks like Kirk Cousins should be a really good quarterback. The stats, John, the stats say he should be an elite quarterback. But is he?
Mm-hmm. No, hell no.
Yeah.
I mean, my answer to the question of elite quarterbacks, the more I watch the league, I think there's two of them. And they're combined 82 years old.
Yeah.
After that, I mean, I not that I don't trust the other guys, but they have to still prove themselves. And I know Mahomes has Super Bowl victory, I'd put him at number
elite,
3. But
elite gets thrown around very loosely.
It does, yeah.
It's kind of lost its meaning. So yeah, I'm with you.
And it can't be just an arbitrary number because the 8th best quarterback in football might not be that great, but the 12th best quarterback in a different era might be damn good. So it depends on. And I think quarterbacking is good in the league right now, but the young players are coming in and they're asked to do a lot really quickly. And look, I think Justin Herbert eventually is going to be in that discussion. Josh Allen, I'm still not sure about. I think Mahomes certainly is there. Lamar Jackson, I don't think, because his passer rating has gone down every single year, and it's trending in the wrong direction. But to me, there's the two guys that we talk about, forever. Roethlisberger's accomplished a lot, but he's, like you said, he's like winding down in his last year and is a shell of himself. Wilson hasn't been to an NFC Championship game in nearly a decade. So
yeah, me started on Russell Wilson.
I was lobbing one up there for you, but my point on that. But like Kirk Cousins, yeah, he puts up really good numbers. It's almost like the NBA guy that you go, well, like Zach LaVine's averaging 27 a game. He's like 5th in the league in scoring. But do you think of Zach LaVine as the 5th best player in basketball? No. Hell no.
Well,
it's just. And stats sometimes obviously can lead you in the wrong direction.
Exactly, and that's obviously something that I try to preach quite a bit because not every on the stat sheet or on the scoreboard touchdowns are all created equal, but the reality of it is they are not. I mean, a touchdown pass, like every touchdown pass is different, every interception is different, every play is different. There's so many nuances and factors and variables that go into this game that it's impossible to quantify everything. Therefore, you're going to get a lot of empty numbers. And I'm not saying that what Kirk Cousins does is empty or non-meaningful. No, that's not the case at all. But if you really broke it down, it's like, when is he having his biggest impact? When is he making the plays? Like that's why you can sit there and say, well, Tom Brady will have a quarter that maybe he, has a couple bad passers or maybe doesn't, isn't as sharp. But then at the end of the day, you come back and it's like, it's like he's playing the greatest game of his life. And it's that because like his impact, in key moments is far greater than guys like Kirk Cousins. And, again, the nuances of the quarterback position and how it's played and this, that, and the other, like one of the big things now is trying to kind of soften the blow of Patrick Mahomes' interceptions, when the reality of it is, yeah, he's going to have more drops turn into interceptions and more interceptions that were dropped because he puts the ball in danger more than any other quarterback. Like, that's a huge difference that people, again, when you look at it, yeah, he may have more dropped interceptions at a expected completion rate, whatever the hell that is, and however you determine that number. I'd love to figure that out. But, you can, come up with all these qualifiers that you want. But the reality of it is, he just, again, puts the ball in danger certainly more than guys like Brady and Rodgers, who are generally near the bottom of the league in quote unquote turnover worthy plays, because, that's taking into account the actual play as much as you possibly can. Again, there's still nuances you can't take from just watching the play, but you can at least put more context and understand. Like, I'm not going to go and criticize Brady for an interception and say, or that's the thing. I'm not going to, Shannon Sharp does this all the time. He's pretty famous at this, but I'm not going to knock him for throwing a pick in a game when the pick was a throw that hit Darden in the gut and bounced up. Now, again, if he was throwing a lot of passes that, were put in high danger situations and, that were possibly dropped interceptions. They don't always have to be dropped interceptions. They just have to be poor throws that create opportunity for the opposing defense, then Brady wouldn't get as much credit for the, you know what I mean, for the dropped
exactly.
pass interceptions. That's the difference between him and a guy like Mahomes, where you can certainly say it's unlucky. It's certainly unlucky when a player, and I've seen a couple for Mahomes where you're just like, man, that sucks. Where it's like, it hits Tyreek Hill in the hands and it just bounces into the defender's hands. That happens. Every quarterback has that. But when I also see that he's also near the top of the league in terms of turnover-worthy plays and then dropped interceptions, and I'm like, you know what? It actually kind of evens out. Yeah, you can point to individual in a vacuum. You can say that interception wasn't his fault, but the big picture suggests that, well, his issue is more or less putting the ball in danger, not necessarily his receivers, because, well, if you put the ball in danger, you're going to turn the ball over more. Like they're not counting those throws that hit receivers in the hands that turn in interceptions as turnover-worthy plays. So they're not negating each other. So there's enough there's enough plays out there for him to have potentially turned it over that at the end of the day it evens out. So yeah, you can cut him a little bit of slack and say for sure that he experienced some bad interception luck. You can do that with every quarterback in the league for the most part. It's just the difference between him and guys like Brady and Rodgers, certainly Rodgers, because he doesn't even throw interceptions, is the number of throws that he has made throughout the course of the season that were just, danger zone throws. You know what I mean? There's you're opening yourself up to more situations like that if you continue to do that, and that's what Mahomes is doing. And that's the thing that's concerning for the Chiefs moving forward, is that when you run into a team like, say, the Patriots, who are very good at making you pay for your mistakes, that's going to be trouble. Like you're going to beat the bad teams because they're not going to capitalize on your mistakes. If you throw an interception, there's a good chance that they're not going to be able to capitalize on it. It's when you throw multiple interceptions in the game and you only score a few points, that's not a good thing. So,
well, the worst interception I've seen all year in terms of the quarterback getting targeted with an interception when it wasn't really his fault was Joe Burrow last week when he hit Jamar Chase along the right sideline.
Yeah.
Jamar Chase beat the corner by 2 steps, and Burrow put it right in his hands. It was a beautiful pass. Not only did he not drop it, he tipped it back, bobbled it right back to the cornerback for an interception. So that's a pass. If you look at it, that's a touchdown pass, right? Because Chase is just going to catch it and run into the end zone, and that changed the entire game around. There were 2 huge turnovers that changed that game around. Instead, it's an interception, and the cornerback is going the other way. I mean, that's Joe Burrow, credited with an interception. Certainly didn't deserve that, but and in fact deserves a touchdown instead of an interception, all in one play.
And that's exactly it. I mean, these are things that all quarterbacks deal with every single year. I mean, this isn't new. This isn't a new phenomenon. So, my issue isn't necessarily the trying to soften the blow of the interception total. It's making the implication that he's the only one that's had bad interception luck, and I've kind of seen that out there, and I'm just like, guys, come on, look, again, he, just like many other players, have had passes get deflected or whatever, but here's the thing, and this is a good question, or a question I'd like to answer, and I wonder how they would determine this, but you might remember exactly the play that I'm talking about because it was early in the season, and I kind of railed on it then, but there was a pass attempt early in the season that ended up hitting his receiver's hands, but deflected and got intercepted. And on the surface, you're thinking, okay, that's a drop, from the receiver. But this play in particular was a Mahomes special, and by that I don't mean it as a compliment. I mean it as this is something he does a lot, where he unnecessarily rolled out and tried to no-look throw it. And
I remember that.
Yeah, exactly. So do I blame the receiver? I mean, it hit him in the hands, but I put more blame on Mahomes in that situation because it was so unnecessary. I just remember it because it was just so unnecessary. You know what I mean?
I think the pass was also pretty high too, if I'm not mistaken.
But again,
it was fairly high. Should have caught it, right? No question.
We're at the point now where it's like if it hits a wide receiver's fingertips, it's supposed to be catchable. Which again, I'd like to determine what is and isn't catchable or whatever. But again, that you're just opening up
more. Would we consider one of the 3 passes that Mac Jones threw on Monday night, the one that Jonnu Smith made just a great catch? That almost looked like an interception worthy pass, because if he doesn't even get a hand on it, that thing looks like it's going to sail right to the DB. So
yeah, but also I don't know if that would be determined as a turnover worthy play, because I think that also that's taking that's putting too many ifs into it. You know what I mean? Because if he does overthrow him, it would also have to be going. And I don't remember exactly what I don't know
if the cornerback
was
in that particular straight line or where. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that thing could have just sailed into the bench.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, but then if we're going to do that, if we're going to do that, then again we can go through and find so many others from other quarterbacks as well. But I think the turnover worthy play, again, it's not. It's kind of been like the in thing this season, because you have to fight narratives with other narratives here and bring context into the situation. I don't think there's too much stock being put into it from a surface level, but I guarantee you when you're sitting there in the film room with your coaches, they're not going to sit there and say, well, that pass was an interception, so we shouldn't be concerned with that. No, they're going to sit there and say, no, look, that was a bad decision. You cannot make decisions like that, even on throws that turn into to positive plays. Like I said, I mean, sometimes, you have to look at it outside of the end result.
Mm-hmm.
Going back a few weeks ago to that Lamar Jackson play, the one that got Chris Collinsworth all hot and bothered, when he rolled back and took the snap and instinctually, and this is a bad instinct, ran directly backwards on a big 3rd down play, took his team out of field goal range, and then scrambled around with like a chicken with his head cut off, and then hucked the ball up, and it was only by virtue of the terrible defense. I believe it was the Browns. Was it the Browns?
That was the Browns.
Yeah,
the
terrible defense of the Browns.
Mark Andrews.
Yeah, and Andrews caught the ball. So the end result was, wow, that was Lamar Jackson magic. Well, the reality of it was that was a terrible play by Lamar Jackson, and he just happened to have. So like, okay, so you get into the film room and you're talking about that play. Do you think the coaches are sitting there and praising every aspect? No, they're like, look, this ended up working out for us, but there, in no situation should you be dropping back like 9 steps when you're in field goal range in a tightly contested game on 3rd and long. Like, it was just every bad thing you could have done as a quarterback, Lamar Jackson did in that sequence, but it resulted in a touchdown. So guess what? People forget about it, or at least the fans do. If you're a good coach, you don't. And I think you try to coach that stuff. Yeah.
Till last Sunday when he did it again and was picked off by Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
in the same situation. He was doing the same thing. He went to the same template and it was picked off. And they had a every time they cross midfield, they have a makeable field goal with Justin Tucker. They were in field goal range, and we saw how precious points were in that particular game against Pittsburgh. Yeah, so if he just gets out of there, gets rid of the football, you kick a field goal.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with kicking a field goal, especially in these weird, like, division games, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, New England, Buffalo. It's freezing out. It's windy. Like, this is not September, or we're not playing in a dome where it's going to be, 31-28. And, okay, we need a touchdown. A field goal doesn't help us. In these tightly contested divisional games played outdoors in inclement weather, field goals are fine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, I like points. Points are good. Points are better than no points. But
yeah, I mean, that's why Matt LaFleur kicked the field goal down 8, with a little over 2 minutes left in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
I remember we talked about it the next day. I don't remember much about the week following that game. I was in a coma for most of the week after Packers lost to Tampa Bay. But it was that I've avoided now for 29 years. So that's good. I was actually in a food coma probably. That's what I drowned my sorrows in food. Every day was Thanksgiving for me. That I had to eat, anything I could find. But that was a weird one. I thought if you were going to do that, then just go ahead and do the onside kick at that point, right? You're down 5, try the onside kick, whatever. Maybe Tampa kicks a field goal and you're back down 8. I don't want to relive that game. It hurts too much. But I know what you mean. I mean, especially those cold weather games where the defenses know the offenses and it's not easy to move the ball. Just kick the field goal. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Hey, look, people put too much stock in the flashiness and the highlights and the big plays, where it's like big plays don't win games. They just win over, casual fans and highlight.
We sound like two cranky old guys.
I am right now, man. I'm drinking my coffee.
Johnny Unitas. I'm going to start sending you, YouTube clips of Johnny Unitas. This is the way the quarterback position was intended to be played. This is how it was. This is the guy you've got to, actually, you would have loved him.
I bet you I would like Johnny Unitas.
Talk about leadership. The guy would have his teeth knocked out and just go back in the huddle and call the next.
Well, play. And again, that's what's so fascinating about the quarterback position and the just how much goes into it, and then it's not just a position about throwing, and it's certainly not a position about running. How we've hammered that into our heads over the last decade or so is beyond me, because I just don't get it. It makes no sense. There's no logic to it, John. Why would you want your quarterback to be a good runner?
Yeah, I like escapability. I think that's important. I love what Brady does in the pocket, the way he just dances in the pocket.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dan Marino was great at that too. I know we kind of rail on Dan Marino. I think he's a great quarterback. Obviously, I think we both agree that he's been slightly overrated over the years, but he moved in the pocket just like Brady does. And Montana was great at that. And I think Rodgers moves in the pocket really well. And it's nice to have that ability to, to run when it presents you, but you can't just be exclusively a running quarterback. You can't. Lamar Jackson's going to have his third consecutive 1,000-yard season rushing. That's all well and good, but how durable is he going to be going forward? And now that they're setting a lot of blitzes at him, he's not able to make them pay for that. If you blitz these top tier quarterbacks that we talk about all the time, they will chew you up.
Oh, yeah.
And spit you out, But if you're blitzing Lamar Jackson and he's not adapting to that, well, look at what Baltimore's been doing the last 4 or 5 weeks, where they're scoring 16 points per game, and their defense isn't good enough with all those injuries to overcome that.
No, and that's why it's going to be interesting to see how that division ultimately shakes up, and we're going to end the show today on this note, because although they're not playing today, they obviously have a lot of interest in what's happening with the Pittsburgh Steelers, because despite their struggles, they are really right in the mix. So we'll end the show on this. I'll give you a chance to make your pick, and I'll make sure I rub it in if you're wrong tomorrow.
Please do. I am picking Pittsburgh tonight. It's a standalone game. Ben Roethlisberger is usually pretty good in these games. I think he's won 10 straight Monday night games. So, I know it's Thursday night, but let's treat it the same. And we know Kirk Cousins is best at 1 o'clock on Sunday. The other time frames, not so good. So I'll take Pittsburgh. I also think that Mike Zimmer's coaching for his job right now. If they get to 5-8 and end up going, 6-11, they may make changes in Minnesota. We know Mike Tomlin's going nowhere. I think there's more stability within Pittsburgh. So I'll take the Steelers to win at Minnesota.
I wish I could disagree with you, but I got Steelers as well. I do think, when it's all said and done, they're going to be able to get to Kirk Cousins. TJ Watt's going to be able to make some plays. And I think, and to your point, the national, the spotlight game doesn't bode well for Kirk Cousins. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But I got Pittsburgh, and excuse me. So if you're wrong, we're both wrong tomorrow, and we just won't mention it. But tomorrow we will. We will be doing our picks for the rest of the weekend. Obviously, no Patriots game, as they bask in the glory of they're going to be in first when they hit the field next, anyways, regardless of the outcomes of the games today, this upcoming week, because they hold the tiebreaker against everyone, I believe. Obviously even Kansas City, because of their poor conference record. So even if all those teams win, Buffalo, Kansas City and all those teams, it's still New England's spot on the top. So that's going to be fun. So anyways, have a great day, folks. Enjoy your Thursday. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. If you haven't already, if you celebrate, make sure you get your Christmas tree up. It's just a great feeling. I got mine out in the living room. It smells really good. I love it. So, but yeah, like I said, tomorrow we'll be back tomorrow morning. Nice full episode talking all things week 14 in the NFL. I'm kind of getting confused here, but we're gonna give our game 14, picks. Yeah, it's crazy, right? Gonna give our game picks. We're gonna have a little bit of fun and possibly talk some more Seinfeld. So have a great day, folks, and we'll talk to you then.